Hi everyone and good evening. I hope you can hear me. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, and thank you for joining in good time. Just give me a thumbs up if I'm audible. Right. All right. As people join in, I will introduce myself and then we will have a game. So I think we can start it off at exactly 7:05. And then after that, I'm going to hand it over to a teammate at Zindua. This workshop is organized by Zindua School, and thank you for joining. My name is Grace. I handle community management at Zindua School. Really glad to have you join this workshop in regards to AI prompting. On call, we have Cyril, who will be taking us through the workshop. So I'll just let him say hi, not say a lot of things. And then after we've done the call, after we've done the game, he can take it up.
Thank you very much, Grace. Hi to everyone. Looking forward to the workshop today. Back to you, Grace. Thank you.
All right. So as just give me a minute, I share my screen. So I'm going to paste the link to the game. So the game is around AI. It's very simple. If you're new to, if you're not a technical person, don't worry. I have made this game very inclusive, so don't panic. So you can click on that link to join the game as I share my screen. So for those joining, we are doing a game around AI. It's not a hard game. I have made it inclusive. So let me paste the link there for anyone who has just joined. So we are 37 on call. You can only see 15 people. Yeah, I know the people who just joined. We are doing a game around AI. As we start, just join and then you can try out the game together. I'll give you 2 more minutes to join. All right. I'm going to gift the person who gets the most questions. So let's see. I can see 7 people have completed. 19 still doing.
Grace, just a question. Are you sharing your screen?
Yes. Can you be able to see it? No?
I can't see your screen.
Okay. Could be my network. Let me reshare. Can you see my screen now? Anyone?
Okay.
No.
I don't know if I can confirm, but I can't see your screen at the end.
Oh, I can see your screen as well.
I can't
All
either.
right. This is weird.
Grace, any hope from your end?
I don't know why it's not appearing. Because on my end, I have shared.
Do you want to try rejoining?
Yeah, let me drop and try rejoin.
Okay, guys, as we wait for Grace, I hope you guys are still continuing the challenge. We should start in the next few minutes. No pressure.
All right.
Okay, as we wait for Grace, you can still keep up the challenge. Once again, looking forward to just starting the workshop in a few minutes.
Yeah, sorry for that. I'm back. Let me try reshare my screen. And then you let me know if you'll see it. I can see 25 people. 25 people have completed and 12 underway.
Grace,
Is my screen? Pardon?
we're just waiting for your screen.
Okay. It's already shared. Are you able to see it?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay. I think instead of taking much time, I think as serial continues, I will share who are the top 3. We have 27 people who have attempted the game, and I can see there are 12 people who are attempting currently. But now that I can't share my screen, I will have to share them here, who the top 3 are. So I'll give 2 more minutes for those who are still taking it. I can see we have 12 people still taking it. I'm giving you 2 more minutes to complete, and then I'll hand it over to Cyril. So we can wind up those who are still attempting the test. All right, 2 minutes are over. I don't know why my screen can't share, but I'll just say from the results, we have 33 people who've actually 37, sorry. We have 37 people who have attempted. I can see there are 2 people who are still attempting it, but I will just give the summary on the people who have the top 3. I will just mention the top 3. So I will start with number 3. Now, the people who just used usernames, I'm not sure how you're going to tell who these people are. Number 3, we have guest 777. I'm not sure how we're going to know who guest 777 is. Please you let me know in the chat. Guest 777, that's number 3. And then on number 2, we have Bradley. Bradley Daudi on number 2. And then number 1, we have Valerie. So are these guys on call?
Hi, Grace.
Hi,
I'm on
congratulations. Congratulations to the top 3. I have something specific for you 3 people. So we have, I know, okay, I can see you, Boniface. Congratulations. For those who don't know, we have an 30-day AI fundamentals course that's starting on the 17th of this month. So for the 3 you haven't registered for that course, I'm going to share the link. Cyril is going to share more of what is going to be covered before he starts on the session. And then I'm going to share a specific coupon for you 3. You're going to have a discount on the course. So congratulations and thank you for acing the taste. Cyril, are you still on call?
Yes, I am on call, Grace, and I'm happy to get started. Thank you very much.
Right.
Awesome. So thank you very much to everyone who's ready to this particular call. I'll just go ahead and share my screen, and I hope mine will be able to Grace for the precursor once again. So this, I'm going to try to screen 2. Just let me know if you can see my screen in 1 minute. I hope there's no problems. Okay, just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. I should be on the slides. Okay, thank you very much. So you guys can see my screen. We should be okay. Switch to slide mode and then we can get started. Okay, this workshop. So this is going to be a workshop on prompt engineering generally. So this doesn't matter whether you don't have a technical background. It's a great workshop for anyone, whether you're building advanced AI systems, that's building agents, whether you just want to know how to write better prompts when working with ChatGPT on chat there. Whatever concepts we cover here are going to be applicable regardless of whatever workflow you're going to go for. So just to get an overview of what we're going to cover here, it's going to be broken down into 3 particular steps, right? I'll try and make it as interactive as possible so that you guys also get to try this really, really well. So the first one is going to be the structure of a great prompt. So here I'm just going to introduce why we care so much about prompting and what's the structure of a great prompt. And it's going to be something memorable, something you'll always remember regardless of what you're doing. Okay, the second layer is I'm going to go through some of the common prompting techniques. Most of the prompting techniques we are going to cover here have scientific papers that back that particular technique. So it's going to be a technique that has been tested either by the owners of the models. You'll always see OpenAI writing a lot of blogs on these particular things, or you'll always see some professors or AI engineers who run experiments on different prompt structures. And here we'll talk about some of the common prompting techniques that have become really, really valuable in the actual world here. So I won't be explaining much. I'll be using examples so that you guys can get a general gist of what it's all about. And then finally, I'm going to wrap it up by just covering a bit of some advanced knowledge on prompting and probably other layers of context engineering. So that's going to be more of like citing and making sure you guys know that things don't end at prompting. It could actually get better. Okay, so generally about me in general, myself, I'm a co-founder at Zindua School, right? I'll talk about Zindua School next in a few. I do have a deep background in data science, and of late, I've been very, very heavy on AI engineering. To be precise, I've been leading AI engineering for Zindua LMS 3.0, where we're actually building AI teaching assistants that personalize education even further. I know we are known as the most personalized school in market, but you want to take this further by creating teaching assistants who can help people across their coding journeys regardless. So a lot of the things I'm talking about, or most of the talks I've had in the past 6 months, 3 months, have been mostly anchored on context engineering and mostly anchored on lessons I've gotten from leading this particular thing in the first place. Okay, so generally about Zindua School, it's a coding school in Nairobi, Kenya, full-time and part-time programs. It's mostly known for core programs in software engineering and data science. I know Grace might probably talk about the day, but more importantly, Zindua School this year has also been launching specialization programs for advanced developers in areas such as AI engineering, DevOps engineering, and data engineering. Once again, these are questions that post-workshop you can easily ask Grace or myself, and we can easily help you. So now that you have like a base background on me and Zindua School, we can go straight up to the flesh of this workshop. So the first thing I'll note is this workshop is a precursor to this AI fundamentals course. I hope it will open the right page here. Next week, it's a 30-day fundamentals course. So once again, it is good for beginners in building agents, and you can see what it covers. If you guys can still see my screen. So it's still going to cover a lot about LLMs, a lot about the tools. So it's going to be how does ChatGPT work? How do you use it? How do you use things like Notebook LM or let's say Perplexity, which are like different chat apps as compared to your typical chat apps. We'll still cover more prompt engineering in that workshop. It's also going to get deep into AI tools mastery, where beyond your typical chat apps, you kind of think of tools like Gamma, 11 Labs, Midjourney. I've already talked about Notebook LM and Perplexity. So think about all the tools that are very common in regards to boosting creativity and productivity. We're going to go in depth in that. So week 1 is going to be more introduction on LLMs and prompting. Week 2 is going to be more AI tools and mastery. But the huge bulk of those 30 days are going to be spent on, cool. Could you help me mute the to help me mute?
Yes.
I don't know who it is, so it's really hard to find people to pass on call.
I'm muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think I was here. So week 1, week 2 is going to be mostly understanding tools and using them. But the bulk of the course is going to be focused on no-code AI agents. So here it's not going to be building agents with code, which most AI engineers would want to. But if you don't know how to code, or if you just want to ease in your workflows, you're going to be exploring how to build agentic systems with N8N and the OpenAI agent kit as well. So this is going to be like 2 weeks of that sort of layer. So if you want to advance beyond the prompting you're going to cover here into full-on, let me just say AI fundamentals, then this is going to be the right course for you. So Grace will just drop the link on chat there, but we'll talk about the program after the session all through. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to get started by talking about a prompt structure. So let's talk about like prompting. So when you think of prompt engineering, we know it's the art of giving instructions to an LLM so that we can get like a specific output. So we are literally just trying to improve the quality of the output we get from a large language model. I'll stop using acronyms on this one. We just want to see the quality of output you get from a large language model. Okay, so let's take an example. A lot of us would jump onto ChatGPT and just drop something like write something about artificial intelligence. This is a very bad prompt because you could just get a huge variance of different responses that don't have the ideal structure, the ideal output of what you want to, right? So this is a good example of a prompt that lacks enough context. It's not giving enough instructions for you to get a really quality response. And you can compare that to a good prompt where I start describing the end task really, really well. Like you're a career advisor writing for university students. So it even knows the audience here who are exploring tech careers. Write a short LinkedIn post. I'm even defining the words, right? Explaining how learning data analytics can open doors to roles in business, marketing, product management. And then, because it's LinkedIn, I tell it to start with a hook, include one relatable example, and then with a motivational call to action. So think about this sort of prompt. Here, I just asked something random about a weird topic, right? I could have easily said, write a LinkedIn post about like learning data analytics, and that would equally be as bad. But on my good prompt, I'm giving it context on who the AI should act as, who the audience is, right? What I'm specifically writing for its LinkedIn. I'm even giving it a constraint that I want it to be under 150 words. And I'm even giving it a format, like start with a hook, include one relatable example, and so on and so forth, right? So this is a good example of a good prompt. And when working with LLMs, you should always think of how you can better your prompt to give it enough context to be able to give you the output you desire. The second one is likely to give us a way better output than that first one, which is likely to give us a vague output. Or because LLMs have different temperature, I can ask the same question and get different answers. Like the variance of your answers will range from extremely pathetic to somewhat good, whereas the second one will be starting from somewhat good to extremely great as well. And you can easily keep improving upon that. Okay, so why exactly do we care about prompting? So we've already said it's the art of giving instructions to a model, but the core layer is because you want to improve the accuracy, the creativity. So it's about the base accuracy, specifically for your core task. The second layer is we also want to reduce the amount of time we're going to spend trying to do this particular work. Some of us can easily design a great prompt, run it one time, get a really good output, probably prompt again to improve that output and they're done. And then others might just be putting vague prompt on vague prompt, and then you spend the whole of your afternoon prompting to get a specific response there. So that's usually like a big problem. So the more quality your prompts are, the fewer iterations you need, the faster you get to the end product that you want as well, and the more accurate you get the end layer. But more importantly is by learning some prompt engineering workflows, we can start discovering new workflows that you've never thought about. At times, we usually come into a large language model with our own embedded knowledge, and at times it could easily unlock it for us. And by easily creating prompt structures that allow us to unlock new workflows that we hadn't thought about, then all of a sudden we're starting to unveil the power of LLMs better. Particularly when it's a reasoning model, you start seeing different sort of pathways that you yourself had not thought about. Whereas sometimes we might just be putting prompts that are very constrained as to the base output that we want. Just in summary about just this base introduction, I think it's always safe to think of a large language model as not necessarily an expert, at least at the moment, right? But more of like a smart intern, right? Who, when you give really great instructions, they'll give you the best output you've ever thought about. The moment you approach LLMs with this sort of paradigm, then all of a sudden you start getting really valuable outputs. Whether you're vibe coding or trying to output code, it's going to be about the quality of what you want to output and the instructions you put there. Imagine if you're explaining to someone, build me a website, versus you're explaining to someone, build me a website, these are the sections I want, this is the type of content I want. All of a sudden, you're starting to see different layers of outputs. That's even if you're talking to someone, the better. And now for an LLM, we are literally trying to have a similar paradigm. I'm seeing a lot of notifications, so I'll take that one so that we see what it's all about. But there's a hand up there. Go ahead, Midbeth. You have the floor, Midbeth? Okay, I'll just continue. But if you can unmute, feel free to unmute and then we'll continue. Or I'm guessing if Grace has to give you permission to unmute, then no problem. Okay, awesome. So that's just like a base intro about prompting. So let's talk about the framework for prompting well. There's one easy framework that easily improves the quality of your prompt as much as possible. And we're going to call this the CRAFT framework. So again, this is just an acronym for the following. Does your prompt have enough context, right? What role is the large language model going to act as? And then you have what action do you want it to undertake in the first place? Then the format of the output is something a lot of us don't define, but it's very critical to define the format of the output. And then finally, the tone, because in different sort of environments, you might require different tones. So let me go through CRAFT in general. So context, what sort of base knowledge should the LLM know for this particular question, right? So here you're just passing additional info, additional data that's going to be required for the end question you're going to ask. Then we think about role here, right? So role here, we're going to now define act as a teacher teaching high school students, for example. I want you to act as a blog writer writing for a tech audience that's very, very technical and wants to learn about the art of prompt engineering. So you're able to define prompts there. And then you have like an action layer, right? Where we now tell it what to do. What question are you going to do? Write a blog, right? Or write a LinkedIn post. So there's a clear base action that you want to have here. But then the other layer is going to be more about the format of the output, right? What constraints are you going to give here? I want you to output a markdown formatted article that's going to be 150 words that I'm going to post on LinkedIn. Make sure you have a hook, an example, and all that. And finally, it's going to be tone, right? What tone do you want? Are you talking to high school students? So I want it to be friendly, right? Or am I talking in a business setting where I want it to be concise, professional, right? So it's concise, but don't ignore details, make it quite professional. So this is what the CRAFT framework is going to do for us all three. Cool. I do have examples. If you have a question, just drop it on chat. And I'll just show you and then we'll be able to see. So Midbeth is saying I'm breaking. Is it true? If you feel like I'm typically breaking, just give me a thumbs up so that I can just adjust my network. I don't know, Grace, on your end, if I'm very clear.
You are clear
Okay.
from my end.
Thank you very much. All good. So that is the CRAFT framework. Now, let's put it into perspective with actual things. So let's take an example here. Imagine I'm a data analyst, right? And someone just gives me base data, I upload it to an LLM, I tell it, summarize this report, right? That's a very bad prompt. It doesn't matter how good that report was or how good the data you fed there is, right? It's just a very bad prompt. You're not giving it the right structures to what you want. And now just to kind of level it against this crafted prompt, where I go ahead and tell the AI, you are helping a project manager who needs to brief the CEO. So now the base context is, this is a project manager. So it's someone in charge of the project. And the person who's going to get the detail here is a CEO, right? So there's certain details a CEO would care about that just a random person would not in this particular instance. The second layer is we're telling it definitively that it's going to act as a data analyst, right? It's going to act as a data analyst. And then the ask is we want to summarize that particular report into 5 key insights focusing on finance. So imagine I have a PDF report that's going to have a lot of data about a particular company, right? We want a report that only has 5 insights and it's going to be focused on finance. And the final thing is I wanted to use bullet points with bolded key figures, right? Probably I just want to go ahead and to our slide. So just use bullet points with bolded key figures, right? And then finally, my tone is, this is a bit, I want you to be very clear. I want you to be very professional. At the same time, I want you to be concise. Don't be so verbose trying to solve that particular problem. This is a good example of prompt that we can use for analyzing data insights. Let's take another example for explaining code, right? So someone just goes ahead, drops a code block and tells it, explain this Python code, right? It might work. Once again, you might get a very pathetic response to a somewhat good or great, right? Based on how that model decides to approach it. Once again, generative models are very probabilistic, so you can ask the same question and get very different results, right? Because there's temperature in the background there. However, for the crafted prompt, we'll go ahead and say, you know what, the learner is a beginner who just, that's good context, right? How you explain code to someone who's coded in Python for 5 years is very different from how you explain it to someone who started. Someone who started, you might need to explain every bit of the syntax. Someone who's been a developer for long, you don't want to start explaining for loops because you've seen a for statement there, right? So that's like really good context that you're giving the AI. Second, here you're going to act as a Python tutor. And then the ask is explain what this code does. I'm telling you to do it line by line and then summarize the overall purpose in plain English. So you'll summarize what the code does fully, and then line by line, I'll be able to understand what each and every single line is doing, right? Keep in mind, here it's a beginner, so they probably care about that sort of line-to-line approach. The third layer is going to be format, right? Probably I want it to output as Markdown, right? We are now in a development environment. Most developers will tend to prefer Markdown formats. A lot of us, when you're building agents as well, we might want to output either a Markdown format, HTML format, JSON format, things that we can pass into an application and we can easily understand the context and structure of that particular text. So it's going to be a Markdown code block for code snippets and bullet points for explanations. And then finally, the tone here, it's not a business setting. I want it to be educational, but at the same time, I want it to be very simple and friendly. In fact, if I was to think really deeply, it doesn't have to be so friendly. So long as it's very simple and educational, kind of covers the prompt for us. Okay, so that's like a really simple way to think about prompt engineering. It's just about like anytime you pass a prompt, right? The question we're going to ask you is, have you passed enough context, right? Have you given it a particular role? What action does it have to take? What is the format of the output, right? And what base tone do you want? Of course, you can make this sort of decision and go ahead and say, okay, probably for this particular task, I don't need to define the role, right? Or probably for this particular task, I don't care so much about the tone because it's going to be you using it. But generally, these are the 5 key pillars of designing a prompt that tends to work really well, particularly when your output is not just focused on you, but it's focused on another end person there. And I've given you the 2 examples there. Okay, so I now want us to take a minute or so to go ahead and try that craft framework, where I want you to just think of a blog article, right, that you want to write here, and just use the craft framework to be able to define what sort of blog you're going to write. And I want us to see who's going to have one of the best blog responses out of this. But before we get to that, answer any. So Ellie Kelly, you're saying you have the same issue with me breaking. You might want to leave the call and just rejoin so that you can, I think it might be a network issue from your end. Everyone else is saying it's okay. So that's Ellie. Cool. So there's no questions. I will take a question before we go ahead and just try this like standard. So just open ChatGPT, open Gemini, open Claude, whatever model you use. And I want you to just try that base prompting technique and tell me what sort of blog article you're going to write. Once again, as soon as you're done, you can share that chat article here on chat, and then I can easily explore some of the examples you guys give us and we can see exactly what you guys are able to come up with. Okay? Is it a thumbs up from everyone? Are we good to try that out? Just use the craft technique. I will write it here down here. So you want to have enough context. We want to have a clear role. We want to have a clear action. We want to have a tone. I've forgotten the format. So it's supposed to be format and then the tone. Okay, Wadhika, you're asking what we're doing. We're just taking 2 minutes to go ahead and apply this craft framework in writing a blog article. I've already shown you how we can use it for explaining code. I've shown it how generating insights from a report, where I can upload a report and kind of explain this. Now I want you to just think of it as you're writing a blog if you want, and I'd want to see like 2-3 examples here on chat, and then we can go ahead. I'll probably kind of see what prompts you guys are writing and load how great those prompts are. And as you guys are doing that in the next phase, I am going to go through the prompting techniques. So just take the 3-5 minutes and then we clear this so that you guys can get a gist of how we go ahead and do this. As soon as you're done, share the chat. Share the chat on the chat. You can always share your AI chat, share the AI chat on the chat, and I'll explore 1 or 2 so that we kind of go ahead and loud and see how you guys can be able. Awesome. We should continue at 7:45 to be precise. So that's in 3 minutes. If you have a question, feel free to just drop it on chat as well, so that we can be easy. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I can see large language person has posted something. Do you mind sharing the chat based on where you're doing this from? You can share your chat GPT link if you don't mind. Like there's a way you can do like a share and then we'll just see it. You can easily delete or archive the chat afterwards. I also want to see the prompt you're able to give it. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Advika. Large language person, waiting to see that. I want to use some of the examples you guys come up with so that I see the prompt. Okay, so I'm just to continue. So let me go ahead and see what we have here. So I'm going to share my screen once again. Screen again, confirm that you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, just give me a thumbs up. We're good to go. Thank you very much. Yeah. So thank you. These are really good examples. Grace, I don't know if there's any prize question here, and then we'll be able to see this. I'm just going to go ahead and choose a random one. So let me open the one by Wadika here on first day at school. So allow me so that I also don't share sensitive information. So I'll just stop sharing. Let me see how the link comes up as first of all. Okay, so I'm going to choose the one by Wadhika. Abigail, I can see your prompt here. And then there's Nairobi attraction, Safari meets city. That's very interesting. So it's like I'll just choose the top 3 and then we'll be able to... Okay, awesome. And then the other one is AI blogging tips for Kenyan youth. This is on Grok. I don't know if I'll be able to open the chat there. Okay, thank you. I have good 3 examples. So let me go ahead and just share. That should be fine. And you guys have access to all the examples we've seen there. So that should be totally okay. So once again, my screen should be live in the next minute. Cool. I hope that's... So let me start with this one. This is saying my first day at Zindua school. Okay, it's a good blog, stepping through the doors. I can't see the prompt, so I can't say so much. But this is a very, very solid blog. Do you mind sharing the prompt to Adhika so that we see what it's all about? Okay, let me look at this Gemini one. So this Gemini one was by, I can't tell who it is. The Gemini one was posted by Wamboi Val. And here we are seeing Nairobi attraction, Safari meet city. So you're helping a local tour consultant. I like that you define the role, right? Or what you're doing. So this is the base context, right? As a travel advisor, write character post highlighting must-see attractions in Nairobi. Use informal, and I love this prompt so much that I'm going to use it for the second layer where we go through the different techniques so that we see how we can take this way further beyond what you've been able to do it, right? And then you now go ahead and do like now make it a blog post. You could have added, this is a 150 character post, right? Okay, I know 150 characters was a bit of a too much constraint, but we did try. But now when we told it to make it a blog post, you could have added the constraint there. Go ahead and say probably you want a blog post with like 5 things to do, or the number of words you want to do it. But regardless, it was able to do whatever you wanted pretty well. Okay. And the final one here is going to be the Grok one. Okay. So you're the largest media house in Kenya. Very interesting. Act as the tutor to help a young blogger coming up to develop a blog about artificial intelligence for their project. Make it fun, catchy, and official. Write it in 3 major paragraphs, beginning with the most important point. This is very interesting. So you're able to see it's the 3 paragraphs. So the output you want is able to come up as much as possible, right? I know for some of you, when you're doing essay writing in school, you might think of the PEE format where you want every paragraph to have a point, an example, an explanation, an elaboration, something of that sort of structure. You can easily tell AI to make it 5 paragraphs, where the first paragraph is the introduction, detailing, and the conclusion, detailing your final insight, and then every paragraph follows that particular format. So you have a lot of control over the structure that you want over there. Cool. I now want to go to the second phase, where we're going to have slightly more fun. However, in the second phase, I'm going to be having fun not using your typical chat apps. I'm going to be using a playground on Open Router. The reason I'm using a playground on Open Router, I'm going to kind of explain it, is because at times the chat apps you're using already have system prompts induced in them. So like they've already told it how to respond in particular ways. In this sort of playground system prompt, so I get to have like full control over that. That's why in ChatGPT, you can easily use the ChatGPT app, or if you really want to test out prompts when you're building like agentic workflows, you might want to go ahead and use the ChatGPT playground as the place to go ahead and try out those things. So I'll be using this Open Router playground to see how we can go about some of the techniques you're going to go for now. Okay, so thank you for the examples. I'll also be routing back to them. Let's talk about this here. So the common mistakes to always avoid is avoid being too vague. That's the first thing I'm going to go ahead and say. We've already said the craft framework is just about giving enough context, right? The more context you give your model, the better it's going to be able to answer. However, I'm going to put a caveat to that. Not always does having too much context like always yield good results. You need to give it enough context for it to know what the base output is like, but it doesn't mean you start writing 1,000-worded prompts, 2,000-worded prompts, or like giving it like 10 pages worth of a prompt. In fact, people say, I know LLMs right now have large context windows, but it doesn't mean you should exhaust that. There's just a sweet spot, right, where you've just given it just enough context to fulfill that particular task. So don't make it vague. give it enough context, but also don't bloat it with context, right? Whatever I've said about bloating with context is what goes to point number 2 here, which is an overloaded ask, right? So someone is saying, I want you to write a blog, after that, book the travel, after that, give me an itinerary, after that, give me the flights, right? Don't overload the ask. You're going to really jumble up and overbloat the LLM with the base with the response you want it to have here. The best way to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm traveling to Nairobi. I want you to help me design places I should visit, right? So my first prompt is focus I should visit. And then the second prompt and now talk about, you know what, now help me book a cheap flight that gets me. So think about this. You want one chat to fulfill all this sort of, instead of me over pumping it in one sort of prompt shot, I'll be able to break it down so that I fulfill certain aspects, get the end result, continue. Which is now a big question to come in and say here, if I'm writing a blog, right? If I just tell AI to write a blog article, it goes ahead and outputs the full blog. But probably I'd go ahead and say, you know what, I want you to write a blog about prompt engineering, and I want you to cover the following 3 layers of prompt engineering. The first one is going to be a structure of the good prompt. The second one is going to be the art of prompt engineering. The third one is going to be advanced knowledge. Now, before you go ahead, I want you to just focus on the first paragraph. I want you to explain the craft framework to users. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not telling the LLM to write the full blog. I want you to write just a paragraph, and I can spend time in making sure I fine-tune that paragraph up until I get the second output, and then I proceed to the second paragraph, where I go ahead and say, now that you've seen the first paragraph, I want us to go to the second paragraph, and here we want to focus on these prompting techniques, and I even give it examples of all that, right? So breaking down your request tends to help, because now you're underloading the ask and you're allowing it to focus on one particular task. You're allowing it to just focus on the context specifically for that sort of sub breakdown. And that's going to be a really good way to think of it. The third one is overloading context. It's usually funny where at times when you've used these tools for a significant amount of time, we tend to not understand that some people go ahead and use for all questions. There's a time I came across someone doing like ChatGPT prompt, and they used to tell it, write me a blog, go ahead and generate slides for me. And these are very unrelated topics. Oh, I want to buy a phone, give me the 5 best models to buy that are under $500, and then in the same chat, they go ahead and say, you know what, I'm writing a blog about mental health, do that blog for me. In the third one, they go ahead and say, you know what, I'm running a workshop on blah, 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 do this for me. And all of a sudden you have this one chat that has very many separate topics within the same chat. And that's what we call overloading context. In fact, anytime you start a topic that's unrelated, you should always open a new chat. And the reason this is very key is in your chat chain, these chat apps are using memory. So whenever you put in a new prompt, it is passing the previous questions and responses as part of memory before you load this next one. So if you go ahead and start prompting on the same chat about travel itinerary, and then in the same chat you start writing different blogs, all of a sudden you're just overbloating the context for that next prompt, because everything that's been passed in that particular chat is going to be passed as memory. So always think of it like that as well, right? We're always going to be using memory, and you'll see it even here, right? In this playground of mine, let me just escape slightly. In this playground of mine, you can see Open Router is telling me, one, I can activate chat, but you can see here, because the playground is also giving me control over memory, right? And it's telling me what chat memory am I going to have. So your typical chat app won't tell you this, but there is something embedded in the background on how much memory. So your previous sort of prompts and responses are going to be passed down. So you always want to have a new chat purely focused on a particular thing. So always open a new chat for different things. Sounds like a small thing to request, but you'd be so surprised how many people kind of underlook that. The third layer is missing audience. When you define an audience, whenever it matters, it really does help, right? So if you want something to be very simplistic, you can say explain it as if you're explaining it to a 5-year-old, or say you're explaining it to a high school audience, or let's say you're explaining it to a very technical audience, right? I want you to write to me on how we can underwrite insurance. I am talking to people who have done actuarial science and have been in the insurance field for 5 years. All of a sudden, the depth of that response is going to be very different as compared to if you just had a generic constraint, generic prompt. And the final one is going to be missing constraints, right? Can you define the constraints of your expected output? how many words? What format should I use? Is there like a document thing you want? Is it Markdown? Is it JSON? For those of us who want such structured things, right? Do I want it to be in point form? Do I want it to be in paragraph form? I think most of the constraints you want here, you need to define them as much as possible. I'll come ahead and say, on this particular example, cool, this is a good example of a constraint well followed. You told it 150 characters, and it really did give you 150 characters as well, right? So a constraint does help as well. Let me see what we have here. I can't see the prompt here, so I don't know what I can do on the cloud version there, but it's fine. Okay, so we're done with the base structure. Now I want us to come to prompting techniques. Okay, there are some common prompting techniques that really do help. Most of these techniques have been studied and they allow us to know, how we can try get the most bang from an LLM. And these are just like some design patterns around prompting techniques, which tend to be really, really great whenever you're building either agents or just doing prompting for yourself. And I'll go through each and every one of this with examples. That way, when you have a question, you can just stop me and tell me what question you have. Cool. So let's start with zero-shot prompting. So zero-shot prompting means I am not going to give it any examples. It's going to be zero shot, so no shots given to it about what I expect here. Think of something like write a 100-word product description for a reusable water bottle made from ocean plastic. Make it persuasive and eco-conscious. So this is just your typical craft-based prompt. I have no example whatsoever. I just want to tell it a bit. I give it enough content able to get like an end sort of result from this, right? So it's a 100-word product description of that one, right? Let me see, because I'll need to be doing this with I'll need to be doing this with Open Router. I don't think I need to do zero shot for you guys. You guys already have good context, but zero shot means there's no shot that have passed, which means like there's no specific examples that have necessarily passed into my particular prompt. This is going to be very different from my next one. And in my next one, we're going to talk about few shot prompting. Okay, it feels like someone has a question. Okay, no pressure. Okay, so in few shot prompting, what I'm going to do is LLM a couple of examples. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it. Example one, I want you to, like when I tell you summarize remote work boosts productivity, this is the answer I expect, like remote work increases employee output. Example two, if I tell you summarize AI is reshaping education, this is the summary that you should output. AI is now it's your turn, right? Go ahead and summarize blockchain could make elections more transparent. And I want you to give me something. And you can see the short summary is trying to make it really simple. Now, these examples could be way more technical. I could have like a full paragraph on what it has to summarize, and then I give example. The whole point of few shot prompting is I'm giving it like a couple of shots, like a couple of examples that is going to guide that LLM on how to respond to different answers. So now it kind of encodes that whenever a specific question, I want an answer that looks like this. Okay, next an example. So I don't know what example we can use here. I'm just trying to think of something on free shot prompting that we can use here on Open Router. Anyone with an idea of what sort of things you'd want to few shot before it comes up? Okay. I think I hear. So I'll come here to Open Router. I'm going to come here and say, I want you to do this, like 2, 3 into bracket, and then times 45, right? And then answer, I'm going to go ahead and tell it, in that problem, I will first add 2 plus 3 to get 5, then multiply it by 45 to get, that's going to be 450 divided by 2, that's going to be 225, right? That's like a good example here. Once again, apologies for my very poor typing there. So let me give it a second question here, where I'm going to go ahead and say like something like 46 minus 41 times 2. And then I go ahead and say the answer. I will first solve the brackets. I hope you guys can see my screen. I hope it's not too small. first solve the brackets, right? 46 minus 41 to give me 46 minus 41 is going to give me 5. Then multiply by 2, right? Answer is 10. Now I tell it, now it's your turn. Okay, I can even be very precise here. Use the examples below. Okay. Give me an answer in the structure above. Okay, and you guys already can see the power of this, right? So here I'm just going to give it like 2 plus 3 cool plus, let me just put into bracket 4 plus 5, and I want to see how it's going to come about, and then I go ahead and divide 3, right? Okay, so let's see what this gives us. I hope it just chooses the model. Okay, I hope Open Router will be slightly fast. If not, I'll just use base ChatGPT. But you guys can see the base layer that we want here is we want to give it, just continue the free models. We want to give it like context and base examples that it's going to cover there. And that way we're going to be able to get like a good example structure there. I wish I had my credits done. I know I use Gemini primarily, not Open Router, but I hope it's going to work because this is the best playground to try with. But you guys get the gist. So this is a good example. So I expect it to think, give me the structure and give me like a response that's going to be similar to that sort of answer structure. Okay, let's go ahead and hear this. Okay, really good question. How can you reduce the tokens you use to prompt an LLM if you're using few-shot prompting? What is the optimum number of examples for few-shot prompting? Okay. Yes, we can use AI Studio. I think that will be way better. In fact, let me jump to AI Studio. That should be better than this, right? No problem. So let me answer the tokens thing, right? So the first thing is we need to understand, for those of you who are here, that in LLMs, we usually get priced using input and output tokens, right? So at times we're trying to optimize this, particularly when you're doing things at scale. So if you ever want to see how different LLMs are priced and how they perform, you can easily come here to artificial analysis. They've always run and tested out almost all LLMs available in market. And you can see they kind of highlight them for intelligence, speed, and price, right? And you can easily go to the pricing layer and see how much it's going to cost for input versus output tokens. I'll answer your question precisely. As much as we are trying to reduce the number of tokens you're passing to an LLM, we have to get into over here. There's a trade-off where you really want to get a good quality output, but at the same time, you want to minimize the number of tokens you're going to go for there, right? So it's very hard to find the sweet spot. So essentially, I need to give it some examples, but at the same time, I don't need to bloat it with too much examples where I'm kind of overburdening that particular token. If you're building agentic systems, right, you can easily test out different prompts, right? So you can go through evaluations where I go ahead and run that sort of model 1,000 times when it had 2 examples, run it 1,000 times when it has 3 examples, 4 examples, and you can even start gauging the output and see at what point is it giving you great output, and at what point is just adding an example not helping you. So whenever we think about building advanced agentic systems, prompting is also something you should be testing. So you can test out different prompts, different wordings. You can use your few shots and test out the different number of examples there and kind of get to it. By the end of the day there, you'll be trying to find the right sweet spot where you get a good quality output, but at the same time, because you can do tracing, you'll be able to see how much cost you're kind of incurring the more examples you do have. I hope that answers your question. Does it answer your building large agentic systems? Testing is the best way to think of it. But at the end of the day, we're not trying to overbloat the context, enough examples to get the base context. Thank you very much. Cool. No additional question there. Okay. This is a bit, it's taking a bit too much. Okay, I will use Google AI Studio. Before I click that, let me just take this. Okay, let me just click here to new chat. I hope it doesn't open my. Okay, there we go. Yeah, a good play. Awesome. So there we go. And then we'll go ahead and run it. Okay, this is just a temporary chat, no pressure. I don't want it to be saved. So this is a good example of few shot prompting where I give it 2 examples and then it now gives me a response that's going to be very, very structured to the similar answer structure I had there, right? So I will start by solving the brackets from the left to the right, 2 plus 3 to get 4 plus 9 to get 9, and then I will divide 9 by 3 to get 3. Finally, I will add 5 and 3 to get 8, right? This technique is really good for things like math. It's really good for things where you want to give it structures to how you want to explain this. If I was designing a teaching assistant and we are answering complex questions, give me a base response, I will give it like structures of the responses and what responses I like and the structure. This few shot will allow it to always give me like a really good answer structure. Very clear. We can go to the next layer here, which is now going to be chain of thought. So in chain of thought, this is a base example. A store sells apples for $2 and bananas for $3. If John buys 3 apples and 2 bananas, how much does he spend? And here I go ahead and think step by step before giving your answer. So chain of thought, there's 2 ways to think about it. Either I tell the LLM to define the steps and then go through the steps to give me an answer, or I myself go ahead and define the steps that I want it to take, right? So think of this chain of thought, right? An apple, like this, like it's going to encode its own. So it's selling apples for $2, bananas for $3. I actually want us to pass this prompt. Okay, so let's go ahead and see this. Still on Google AI Studio, right? Awesome. So this is going to be a different prompt, and then I breaks down its thinking process, for the bananas, and then calculate of chains. Or easily tell an LLM, this is my problem, design the steps I could take. And then now go to the next prompt and start giving it instructions for each and every single step there, right? So there's one way to let it explain its chain of thought, and we force it to kind of think well. Really great in reasoning models, really great when you have like a really complex reasoning problem, but at the same time, you can encode the steps and then let it do it. That's actually what we do a lot when you're coding, because at times when you're coding, it's the chain of thought that really does help. Where you go ahead and say, you know what, I'm trying to design this particular web app that integrates with this particular thing as well, right? Go ahead and define the steps you're going to take, and then go ahead and take the steps to generate the code for me. So when you think of things that where we, like an AI has to think about the base process, chain of thought tends to be a really, really great way to approach it. Few shot might be a great way for you to get the right answer that you want. Okay, feel free to stop me whenever you have questions as well. Now let's go to the next one. The next one is what we call meta prompting. So meta prompting, a lot of us might confuse it with few shot prompting. But here we're going to give the AI model a prompt, and then you're really going to define the structure of how it's going to write the answer. In few shot prompting, I give it a question and how the answer is going to look like. And I can give it either 1 shot, 2 shot, or multi-shots there, right? It doesn't matter how that's going to be. In meta prompting, I'm really just defining the solution structure, okay? So why should professionals prompt engineering? And I tell you a response should look like this, right? Section 1, have the hook. Section 2, have the explanation. Section 3, have the call to action. I don't have to give the example, but rather in this sort of structure, I am giving it the structure of that sort of output. This is a good example of a light structure. If you look at the paper that went ahead and tested out meta prompting, which I think it's a link I need to add here, you go ahead and see how they do it for mathematical problems, where they define this thing to be more like a meta, right? So it even goes ahead, if I can get that. I will pass the link here, but I can define this way better. I go ahead and say that, okay, let me give an example. You're going to be here. Awesome. Write me a random essay on prompt engineering. Okay. This is just a run here, and then you're going to see whatever here with chats. Wait. Awesome. Thank you very much. I want to review your students' response, right? So here I go ahead and say you're a teacher and you want to review this essay. Okay, and right, we'll go ahead and pass that particular essay. And then now we go ahead and say your solution, your answer should follow the following structure. Okay. 1, here is your score. Out of 5. Cool. Then we go ahead and say, here is what you scored on every aspect, on every rubric aspect, on every pillar of the rubric. And supporting explanation. And then at the end of the day, I go ahead and call it, and we go ahead and say, we go ahead and define and go ahead and say, you know what, now give an overall summary of the feedback. Okay, so of course here, I'll probably need to pass the rubric. So I don't know what we will go ahead and do. Like this rubric, we want to test grammar. So test grammar. And this is going to be worth 20 points. It's going to be worth 5 points. And then we'll go ahead and test like, let's say like the reasoning content is going to be worth 5 points. And then finally, probably I'm going to go ahead and say, so content is worth 5 points, grammar is worth 5 points. I don't know what else I can do. So let me just put those 2. Typically, like when you're building this, I'd even define the rubric pillars and what it means to get different points, right? So when you're building like a proper agent, I'd be passing the essay as context. I'd also be passing like a full-fledged rubric as context. And then at the end of the day, just go ahead and do it, right? Okay, so this is fine. Cool. And then I don't know why I've control V'd again. So this is it. So this is my meta structure here. I'm not giving it examples of my response, but I'm giving it the base meta structure. And now you can go ahead and create that particular essay. Okay, so let's see what it gives us. Okay, so it's telling me I got a 4.5 out of 5. The grammar was 5 out of 5. Your essay demonstrates blah, blah, blah. The content is that, right? And it gives me an area of improvement. And then it goes ahead and summarizes the entire feedback, right? I could have easily added here that give me the response in Markdown. If this is something I wanted to connect to a web app that goes to the end user at the end of the day. Okay, thank you very much. That's meta prompting. You see the difference between that and few shot prompting. Okay, I know time is not on my side, so I'll try and rush through that as well. The next one is what we call generate knowledge prompting, right? So here I'm going to go ahead and do this. We're going to say, before writing an article on climate resilient cities, list the 5 key principles of climate resilience, right? So what I'm really doing here in this particular layer is I could easily go ahead and take like a research article that details the 5 key principles. And then I go ahead and tell it, using that list, write a 200-word article about how Nairobi can adopt those principles. So this is what we call generate knowledge. So I'm literally grounding the responses of this particular LLM on a particular source, right? In this instance, I can copy paste it there. Or in instances like Notebook LM, right? A lot of this works really well on something like Notebook LM, where you can upload the documents, right? So something like Notebook LM uses this where you upload the documents which are going to be the sources. Okay. So I'm not going to do this example. This is very straightforward, but here it means like I pass the base context of what's supposed to be the source of that. and then really define the LLM to use that as the main knowledge source. The next layer here is going to be prompt chaining. This is very obvious, right? And this is a lot of how we do it, where I go ahead and tell it, you know what, generate 5 creative startup ideas in EdTech. And then after that, pick the best idea from that list and write 1 paragraph elevator pitch. And now we go ahead and write a 3-month go-to-market strategy. And this is how a lot of us now work in a particular chat on prompting, right? Where I have these chains. Guess what? You know what? I am a random guy. I don't know what business to start. This is my background. Give me a couple of startup ideas. It gives you an idea. You go ahead and say, I really love idea 3, right? Now go ahead and give me an elevator pitch about that idea, or tell me what actions I need to take, and so on and so forth. So this is just like a really good prompt structure. It works really well in chat apps because there's already induced memory over there. So it tends to really go well. And you can easily build upon this prompt over time. It doesn't always have to be the time you're chatting. You could easily come tomorrow and just pass more and more context. And that's how you can start from a very simple response and you keep building up a response till the end of the day. A good example is what I explained with blogs, where I said, you know what, I want to write a blog about prompt engineering. So first of all, break down the steps or the steps for prompt engineering if I'm to explain this to absolute beginners. Then I go to prompt 2, I tell it, you know what, now I want us to craft the first paragraph on these particular things. I want you to focus on the craft framework, right? Explain context, role, blah, 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 and then output that paragraph. And then I go and clear all those paragraphs. And at the end of the day, I ask it to now combine it all into a full blog as well. So that's a good example of prompt chaining, where we just break down a really a task into sub prompts, or we are able to gradually build into something using that particular chain. Okay, the final one here is what we call tree of thought, right? This is also really good for reasoning models. So think about this. You're solving a very difficult puzzle, and then you go ahead and tell it, generate 3 possible ways to approach it. Briefly explain each, then pick the most promising one and continue with that particular part. Take an example, you're a student learning algorithms for the first time. You're not that much of a developer. So you face a really difficult coding challenge. You go ahead and say, you know what, I want you to give me 2 ways to solve this particular challenge. Explain it to me, right? And after explaining it to me, give me the code options for each and every one of them. And you can easily make that choice at the end of the day. So this is a tree of thought, right? Tree of thought is slightly different from chain of thought, right? Because here we tell it to think. Tree of thought, we're really forcing it to think of different ways to approach it before we get a base technique. And these are some of the common prompting techniques that people use, at least in being able to design better prompts. But at the core of it, remember that your prompts are purely anchored on the craft framework. Always remember that you're trying to pass context, you're trying to pass a role, you're trying to pass the action. The format of the output, which you've seen, like there's different ways to do this, either giving it few shots or doing the solution structure, but more importantly, the tone. Remember, there's layers like perplexity, where you can easily define the tone overall for a particular series of chats. You can also define like base context for a particular series of chats. So different apps have different ways to ground this. But for your typical chat app, you want to really make sure that all your prompts are following this sort of context framework or craft framework. Any questions from anyone on that one? Any questions? Who? Any comments so far, so good, right? If you guys are enjoying the workshop so far, just give me a thumbs up. I'm almost done. I'm about to go ahead to my wrapping up. Go ahead, Wamboiva. Wambo, you can ask the question? Oh, it's just a thumbs up. Thank you very much. That was a hands up. Thank you. It seems like we've all understood, right? Yes, Matthias Nzioka, go ahead. I want us to wrap it by 8:30. Okay, I'll wait for the question, no pressure. But now let's go ahead to the final layer. Okay. So the techniques I've talked about so far tend to apply for both prompting, when you're prompting like your typical chat app, as well as when you're prompting agents. However, there's one clear difference, or a couple of clear differences that I want us to note, right? whenever you're building agents, and I know this workshop is not purely focused on agentic workflows, it's purely focused on just how you can prompt, but it's always good to think about it. Whenever you're building agents, right, or when you're in chat-ups, memory is handled for you. When you're working with agents, whether you're coding it with a framework like LangChain or you're using N8N, you really have to think about that memory layer, right? Do you have to handle memory yourself? Where is that memory coming, right? So in chat-ups, memory is handled for you. Whenever you do the next sort of thing, it's already encoding previous memory from the previous chat. So it's very easy to do prompt chaining. When you're building agentic workflows, you have to think about memory. The second thing is when you're just working with chat apps, particularly when you're not on a playground, you should know that there's always an underlying system prompt. ChatGPT is not letting you just use ChatGPT like that. They've stylistically designed a system prompt that is there to optimize the end sort of result of what you want to get at the end of the day there. So they want instructions, or they have system instructions on how ChatGPT is going to work on chat app. So that's always something you need to understand. So that's why when you see the LLM coming mostly with M dashes, that could actually be a large language problem. But there's certain stylistic differences you'll see between Claude and ChatGPT or Kimi K2 and any different model you have. And some of it could be influenced by the system prompt, including it telling it instructions on what it should not produce. And some of those also exist on the memory layer of the actual engine, right? It might not accept doing certain responses. But on chat apps, they have so much control on that particular system prompt. When you're building agents, you're the one to define the system prompt. There's no underlying system prompt other than the restrictions they've placed on the large language model itself. The final thing is, when you're working on chat apps, they already have tool calls integrated for you, right? And you've seen it there with something like not Google AI Studio, but Open Router, where you could see it asked me whether I need to click on search, right? Can I just have search readily available, and so on and so forth. So always note, like, there's tools that have been embedded. These tools could be as simple as like a search thing. So when you tell it to search, it goes ahead and looks for a browser. Or if you tell it to do math, it looks for a calculator. When you tell it to run code, it runs a code interpreter in the background. However, when you're building your own agent, you might want to engineer those particular tool calls. So these are some key differences here, right? When you're using chat apps, a lot of things have been thought for you, so you use it to your advantage. You'll tend to notice different LLMs based on their chat apps might easily pass really good tool calls, like ChatGPT might easily pass like a weather API tool call, such that when you ask the weather today, the LLM does not know, but it knows it's going to call the weather API because it's already in ChatGPT. Whereas you might go to a different open source model that does not have the weather API, right? And it might be hard to answer that particular question. But it's just not, most of the things you're going to use will already have enough tool calls integrated. But when you're building your own agent, whether it's no code or with code, you might have to define what tool calls you're going to have. So prompting techniques might be very similar, but it's always good to understand the underlying architecture around this particular thing. However, my most important thing here is to understand that when we think of improving the output of particular models, prompting is just like the first layer of this entire technique, right? In fact, I'll go ahead and say that the way to be an AI engineer in today's world is to learn the art of context engineering. And I'd like to think of context engineering as 5 pillars. Today, we've only covered prompting, which is what I call the instruction layer. However, there's a second layer. Can I give an LLM access to tools that it can call at any given time, right? Either it can run code, either it's going to be a browser automation tool. That's going to be another layer. So the moment you're really great at prompt engineering, ask yourself, can you be great at encoding tools that your LLM can use to take certain actions? Either get additional data, probably get data from an e-commerce app about your orders and be able to use that as context. So tool calls can easily improve the output of the model. The third layer is retrieval augmented generation, right? Today, we've taken an example where we can easily pass like the generate knowledge. And that's when the knowledge can fit within the context window of an LLM. Remember when you opened artificial analysis, we started looking at pricing. But the other thing you need to look at is different LLMs have different context windows. Gemini models might have 1 million tokens as what you can pass. Others might have 200K tokens. Others might have only 50K tokens, right? So the number of tokens you can pass might differ from model to model. I don't know where that graph is, but you guys can easily think about that. But even if your model requires 1 million tokens, it is not efficient right, for you to go ahead and utilize those full tokens. There's a lot of research papers that go ahead and share that more is not always great, right? There's always a sweet spot, and that's why we do a lot of testing there. And there's research that goes ahead. Even if I have a 2 million token window, I'm probably better off just using 100K tokens generally there. When you think of retrieval augmented generation, it's the art of passing a retriever or a data source onto an LLM. And there's a lot of really great techniques on being able to choose just the right data source to pass as the context there. I also have 2 slides on this. I don't know if we can share it post-workshop as well on retrieval augmented generation. The 4th layer is memory, right? Memory is 2 layers here. If I'm doing an agent that's going to run on a particular app, I want to pass memory based on user metadata. So does it know that my name is Cyril, that I'm a data scientist, right? You know, and it can know like certain things about me based on what I encoded in that application when I was registering. The 2nd layer of memory is what we call short-term memory, where I'm able to pass the previous prompts and responses back as context. So there's what we can call long-term memory, there's short-term memory. So this is how we engineer what the LLM should remember for each and every single prompt you pass there. So this is more of like what additional context do we not have to define every time. And the final layer is where, if you're coming from a data background, I highly suggest fine-tuning. This is when we now take an LLM that we have open weights for, and we now start retraining it, which means like tuning it for specific tasks. At the moment, you're being given like general purpose large language models. What if I wanted it to be so good at answering customer support questions for a particular bank? Okay, that's a small thing. Probably I don't want to fine-tune for that. Probably want it to be so good at creating front-end frameworks, right? I want it to be so good at code. So I take an open source LLM, I go ahead and fine-tune it using systems like reinforcement learning or supervised fine-tuning, so it knows what is great code output, what is bad code output. And all of a sudden, I output a new LLM with embedded knowledge. Very different from retrieval, where I want to retrieve relevant knowledge at any given time. Fine-tuning, it feels like I'm going to output a new model that's going to be way better for that sort of base task because I've retrained it with my data set on those sorts. So each and every single layer is more advanced. Like, yes, tool calling is more advanced than prompt engineering. RAG is going to be more advanced than tool calling. Memory sort of engineering is going to be more advanced than the rest. And the ultimate one is going to be fine-tuning before you become an AI researcher and start building the models yourself. But if you're building agents, right, or you're building anything that's using AI, thinking about this particular flow is what's going to really help you. And that's exactly what you're trying to champion in the next course there. And I'll go ahead and ask Grace to share the coupon code. I know we had a special coupon code for people in this particular call, right? So once again, in this 30-day fundamentals course, we will go beyond prompting, tools mastery, to more of like how we build agentic systems, where you'll also start exploring some of those sort of different paradigms like tool calls, right? And how you think of retrieval augmented generation as well. However, if you really want to get into AI engineering next year, and I know in the email after this workshop, we will have that, Zindua will be launching an AI engineering course that's going to be way more technical. So this is really good if you don't even have a coding background. But if you have a very deep coding background, next year we'll have a specialization program on AI that goes deep into each and every single pillar of context engineering, and we'll be coding and building very, very advanced agents that kind of cover all these 5 layers. But generally speaking, today you've learned the easiest way to improve the quality output of LLMs. This is the easiest and fastest way to start testing out your things. And you should not be adding complexity if you've not tried it all through. But there's more ways, but you can easily get 80% of efficiency by just passing the right prompts on that. I will take questions, and then I'll just pass it over to Grace to tell us what the coupon code is. And anyone who uses the coupon code before midnight tonight will be able to join that 30-day challenge and get deeper beyond what we've done in the workshop today. Thank you very much.
There's a question. I don't
Okay.
know if you've been able to answer the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Awesome. Okay, so the first question here, okay, first time, okay, so let me just take it bit by bit. So first time knowing Open Router, how good is Open Router? So if you're building agents and you want to try out different models, I love Open Router because it means I only have one API key and I can try out as many models as I want, right? So when I'm on Google AI Studio, I'm restricted to Gemini models. And Gemini models, not Gemini models, like models by Google, right? Whether it's the Gemini models, whether it's the Nano Banana models, whatever they have there. But when I'm on Open Router, which I'll just open over here, right? Particularly when building agentic systems, I can try out different models with the same API key as much as possible. So let's take an example of the models this guy support here, right? Some of them you've not even heard of, right? So I could easily come in and say I want to use Quen, right? This is a 0.6 billion token there, and I can easily test it out. And I can even come here and filter. I want a model with context like a million, and all of a sudden I have the Amazon, Anthropic, and all that. And all this I can use by just defining one like API key, right? So for me, instead of you trying to use different sort of API keys for each and every single model, OpenRouter allows you to do this. It has a playground. You can test it out all across, and it has almost all models you will think about. And they have a really good reference system where they're running models in their deployment, so you can easily kind of really trace it and see how it's performing each and every single time, right? So you can see your price per token for every call as well, okay? And even here, you can come and discover all through. So it's okay to use SDKs, but you can also use OpenRouter for just quick access for all models in one API. I hope that answers your question. That was John Maingi, right? How good is it? Go ahead and try it, but personally I use it. I don't usually go to get API keys for DeepSeek. I'll just go ahead and get one API key, run DeepSeek, run Quen, run Kimi K2. I tend to love those Chinese models for certain layers. Get Gemini, I tend to use AI Studio, but also OpenAI and different layers of OpenAI also covered there. So OpenRouter is just a way to save time and access this. Additional advantage is you get free access to free models, including thinking models, which you might not get from just going to OpenAI, for example. Cool. Large language person, examples of agents. I know examples of chat apps could be Grok, ChatGPT, Google AI Studio. What about agent examples? This is a very deep question. I don't know if I can answer it fully. But once again, chat apps, you could call them that they're agentic chat because they have a system prompt and then you are able to kind of work with it. But they've created what we call like an agentic workflow that induces memory, right? Which long term, which is about you, and short term, which is about that particular chat. And it has like system instructions on how it's going to work. Let me just explain what an agent is in short, right? We're just trying to be able to define a workflow where AI can easily be told to do something without necessarily humans overseeing that particular thing. So it's like an automation around large language models here. A lot of the AI apps you use in market are actually agentic AI apps. If you're using Casa for coding, they've literally defined like the prompts, they've defined the models, they've defined a lot of things. There's code, there's an agentic code system that defines and allows Casa to interact with LLMs so that it can generate code for you. Or if you're using something like Gamma for slides, there's an agentic system that has explained to it how it's going to generate those particular slides, right? So agentic workflows allows you to define, right, without so much human interaction, how you can fulfill specific objectives, right? But this is a deep topic, probably not the best way to do the example, but it just means like I'm building more of like something that will use AI to fulfill a specific objective, whether it's going to be running in a web app or whether it's going to be running within an existing application. Let's say on Slack. When someone asks this question, go to this knowledge base, find an answer, and then answer them without me necessarily overseeing it. I hope that answers your question, large language person, right? So it's like you pass instructions and AI is going to do things by itself. So different types of agents, it could be as simple as a chat app or it could be as complex as a coding agent, right? Those tend to be really, really complex with very, very detailed instruction flows. The other question here is from Musa Kathilu. What about these AI models that are specialized to a specific niche, like Midjourney for photos? Do you still use either of different methods of prompting, or they require a specific style of prompting? Okay, the quality of your prompt is also going to matter for non-large language. Let me not say non-large language models, right? It's going to matter for these specific models. Whether you're using diffusion models for images, you're using some audio models as well. What you're literally trying to do is you're trying to pass enough context for you to be able to get the end output, right? So just remember the craft framework. The only difference is your output here is going to be different. It's going to be a photo, it's going to be audio, it's going to be a video, and like here where we are just getting an output like text, right? So not all technique might work in the same way, but you can easily use the encoded knowledge around craft to understand how you can give it better context to output it. Okay, thank you. So basically agents are what developers will interact to build chat apps, while chat apps are what end users use. I don't think that's the definition, right? Agents are just think of a workflow that you want to pass an AI into. We can call that an agentic workflow. So you're able to pass instructions and AI is able to self-fulfill by itself. Instead of me doing prompt training where I say write a blog, and then I go ahead and tell it, okay, now I want you to review this blog. I could create an agentic workflow. I say LLM1 will write this blog. After it's done with this blog, it will pass it to the second LLM that's going to review that blog, give feedback back to LLM1. LM1 regenerates a new blog based on that feedback. And I want you to repeat this process 5 times. And then at the end of the day, you'll give me an output, right? Keep in mind, I won't have human touch. All of a sudden, I'll just give it a question on a different topic. And those LLMs are going to interact without me being part of that. That's a simple architecture, but it could get way more complex, including passing retrievers, passing memory, right? Up until you're able to get something. I hope that's clearer, large language person. Awesome. Boneface, can I use the models to improve on the prompt? Yes. The whole point of using the model to create a prompt from you is what we call prompt tuning. So LLMs might actually be better at prompting than we human beings. So even in agentic workflows, you'll get to instances where I have a problem, I go ahead and tell LLM1, design a prompt for me, and then I pass that prompt on LLM2 or the same LLM to be able to do that for you. So prompt tuning is definitely a technique that you can use where like the LLM engineers its own prompt for you. Okay, you can also tell it to tune a prompt using the craft framework. Okay, does it make sense to fine tune an LLM to be good at sequential function calling, or LLMs are generally good at sequential function calling? So when you talk of function calling, you're still under tool calling, for example, right? Just clarification. I know that's the final question. Okay. So I know there's a big problem around tool calling in LLMs. There's a lot of different research that's going on in this particular field. Just like prompting and the context window, passing more tools does not always mean you get better results. So if you find an agent with access to 40 tools, it might actually perform worse than an agent with 13 tools there, right? So tool calling is something that's still being optimized. There's a lot of science and research going around this here. But generally, LLMs are not doing well with tool calling, right? In fact, some people like Cloudflare wrote a blog on some ways to solve really complex problems is to actually let the LLM write code, pass the code over a code interpreter, and then go ahead and get a result, and that might easily yield better fruit than that. I don't know if I can get the blog here. Cloudflare blog against tool calls. Once again, this is more advanced agentic calls, and we can have the chat afterwards. So here they are going to say this is the better way to do MCP, right? And I'll just pass the article here. And you can easily read that. But there's a lot of research going on around tool calls. The final answer for you I will have is, because I can't give you a definitive answer about how good LLMs are at sequential function calling, but we do know they struggle with tool calls sometimes. What we know is certain models tend to be better with tool calls as compared to others. That's why a lot of us tend to prefer Claude models when coding, because they just have like a really good structure for tool calling, right? And that's what has given it the edge. There was a time where GPT had better reasoning, but Claude 3.5 had really good tool calls, so it tended to be the de facto model for a lot of coding workflows there, right? But a lot of things are changing, and more models are becoming really good at tool calls, including something like GLM models by ZAI. They also tend to really do well at tool calls. So I can't answer that question definitively. Different models will have different performance, but at the same time, there's a lot of research around tool calls and how to get LLMs to better that over time. So I hope that answers the question. Cool. Thank you very much. Grace, we're left with 54 people. I will let you share the coupon code because I'm done with the questions. And anyone who'd love to join the 30-day AI fundamentals course can use that. And Grace, you can also tell us how much they are likely to save on that. So I'll just pass it back to you, Grace. Thank you very much, guys, for giving me the audience. I hope you're able to understand and gain so much from the workshop we've had today.
Great. Thank you so much, Cyril. We can give him a round of applause. Yeah, and use an emoji right there. So I'll share with you about the coupon. For everyone who's joined this workshop, you have 20% off. Early bird ticket is done, so we are currently on phase 2 of the ticket, which costs 3,000. but because you joined today, we're giving you a 20% off discount on the same, which will you'll be able to pay 2,400. You'll be saving 600 Kenyan shillings. So if you're able to redeem the coupon before midnight, then you're able to get your discount. I have also shared this information on email for everyone who has registered for the call. I will also be sharing the recording in case you miss some bit of the class, of the workshop. I know some people had issues with their network, but I'm going to share the recording tomorrow. For now, I have shared an email with still the details on the coupon for the discount on the course. Looking forward to have all of you join the course. Just register and redeem your coupon. For the 3 winners, I have shared your special discount. You get a bigger cut for being among the top 3. Valerie, I've not been able to get your email address, but I've been able to communicate with Bradley and Boniface. So Valerie, I will need your email. So kindly share it with me so that I can share with you your specific coupon for part of the winners. I'm sure Cyril has shared all the information on what is going to be covered. The course will be running from 17th of November to 16th of December. That you will have mastered AI fundamentals course. It's going to be an in-depth practical course. Looking forward to have you all. So I'll give you a minute. I have reshared the link. Just register, and then while you're checking out, use the coupon code workshop while you're checking out for you to redeem the 20% discount. Disclaimer: the coupon is valid till midnight, so do make sure you redeem your coupon. Thank you, Valerie. I've seen your email. I will be sharing your coupon in a few. But that's it. Thank you for joining our workshop and for staying till the end of the workshop. Looking forward to have you in the course. Do have a good night. See you next week for the course.
Okay. Bye-bye to everyone. You'll have access to the slides. All is well. Those who guys join the workshop next week, looking forward to having you as well. Enjoy your night.
Enjoy your night, guys. Bye.
Bye.